Hey, hello everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm Dustin Angel, Director of Education, if you didn't know that already. And I get to introduce our speaker, Sarah, today. Before I introduce her, I'll explain how we ended up getting connected and why she's here. Well, are you going to do that? Okay. So there are sometimes amazing opportunities that come along that seem like they shouldn't even exist, but they do. And one of them is the Organization of Biological Field Stations Station Exchange Program. This is something that everyone in this room is eligible to apply for. And you find another field station and you say, I'd like to go there for a week or 2 weeks and meet your people and shadow the research and the conservation and education going on there. And so you find a partner place to put you up and give you some lodging. And then there's a grant piece that helps pay for it too. I got to do this with the Sitka Sound Science Center last year, and that's where I met Sarah. And it was a really amazing experience. And we didn't know at the time that she'd be able to come here, but luckily we were able to get the station exchange program again. So when I went up there, they set me up to see all their different kinds of education activities. And one of them sounded so amazing. It was a high school program that worked with Indigenous youth, and where Sarah's job was to provide science education support for the high school classroom. And I got to shadow that, and they had a cultural ambassador there talking about cultural or craft practices. It was really cool. And I thought, gosh, this Sarah person's really cool. So we're very lucky to have her here to talk about the work that she's doing and the work that the researchers are doing at the Sitka Sound Science Center. She's the science educator and community coordinator there. I think she's been there 4 years now. Yeah. Um, Originally is from the Northeast and has a degree in environmental sciences from Colby College in Maine. Got it. And she's really cool. So we're in for a treat. This is something a little bit different than our normal talks. Save up lots of good questions so we can learn about how things work at another field station. Okay, Sarah.
Um, Thank you. Thank you. Um, I'm really excited to first be able to express my gratitude to all of you for hosting me this week. Um, the Science Center, the folks there, we still talk about Dustin's visit pretty regularly, and just how impactful it was to have an educator from another field station come and see our education programs and then share a bit about the special sauce of Archbold. We definitely talk about it a lot, and so I'm really grateful that I got to come and see um, Katie, Dustin, and Yelena work in the scrub camp and then meet some of you throughout the week. So thank you very much for having me. So the Sitka Sound Science Center is located in Sitka, Alaska, and we are also a member of the Organization of Biological Field Stations. We're a younger field station. We were born in 2010 after a college shut down. Sheldon Jackson College was its name, and it used this building as its science building and had some other facilities that we now operate. And the community asked for a science center. So when the college shut down and the question was, what do we do with this facility? The community kind of collectively decided to create this science center. And so now we are a working facility with over 20 full-time staff, and we've grown a lot over the last few years. And so I'm going to share a little bit of an overview of just the organization itself, just to kind of give you that background. And then I will share a little bit about the education programs that I work on specifically. So I have this thing. Oops. Sitka is on Tlingit Ani. Ani is the Tlingit word for land. The Tlingit people have stewarded the area since time immemorial. And Southeast Alaska is Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian territories. Just to showcase the distance I traveled, Southeast Alaska is kind of that eastern arm of it. A lot of people do this hand signal to show off the shape of Alaska. And so people are familiar with the Aleutians, the North Slope, and then Sitka is down in southeast, which is a totally different place than northern Alaska. Oops, keep doing that. And then when you zoom in on Southeast Alaska, you see we're an area dominated by water and these islands. So Sitka is part of the ABC Islands. You've got Admiralty right here, and then Sitka's on Baranof Island, and then you've got Chichagof. So we're the ABCs, and Sitka's unique to Southeast because it's on the outer coast instead of following these inner island channels like Juneau's on kind of the end of that bay there. And Sitka is, you can only get there by boat or by plane. We only have 14 miles of paved road. So when you arrive to Sitka, you come across the bridge from the airport island and you enter kind of the downtown area. And you've got 7 miles paved road one way, 7 miles the other. And it does extend a bit further than that with trails and dirt roads and everything. But we're a small town, hard to get to, but stunning. I mean, we've got mountains behind the town. We've got Mount Edgecombe looking out off the ocean. And then we're, we've got the wildlife of the Tongass National Rainforest on the land side and the wildlife of the Sitka Sound on the water side. So I threw in a photo of a coastal brown bear and some puffins for our bird people in the room. Shout out to you guys. Sitka is a town that talks about fish a lot. As soon as you arrive, you kind of start hearing about different fish and people start offering you fish for your freezer, whether you're fishing actively or eating fish or, trying to figure out ways to store your fish. It's a big part of life there. I featured 2 local legends. So Linda Bankin is the director of the Alaska Longline Fishermen's Association, and she does a lot of conservation work to protect our fishing industry and our fish in Southeast Alaska. So here she is on her boat admiring her halibut, pretty big fish. And then we have Pauline Duncan teaching a student how to traditionally smoke salmon, how they did a long time ago. It's very interesting. You cut the fish open and you lay it out over an A-frame cutting board and you slice it so that it folds out. And then once you dry it, you can fold it back up and it stores really nicely with the skin on the outside and the meat kind of wrapped up on the inside. She calls it newspaper style. And so the Sitka Sound Science Center's role in all of this is to be a hub for science education and science research for the local community and across Southeast Alaska broadly. Our mission is to increase awareness and understanding of coastal Alaskan ecosystems. So that's anything from terrestrial to aquatic to marine ecosystems, and all done through the lens of science education and research. So we've got Iona here holding a small coho salmon that she released into the ocean in May for our annual salmon release party. And then this is me and Mari biking during summer camp out on our trails. So to give you kind of an overview of all the different entities at the Science Center, I wanted to start with our research department. I was thinking about this kind of the way that I am hearing you all talk about fire here is kind of similar to how we talk about water and rain in Alaska. So Sitka's in the Tongass National Rainforest. We have a ton of rain all year round, and we have the really steep slopes. So naturally, debris flows are a pretty common occurrence in the area. And similar to how your fires are here, they're both, normal and important for the ecosystems in some ways, but also can be harmful to the human communities. So in in 2015, Sitka had a fatal landslide, and it prompted the community to start asking questions about how we can be more prepared for landslides. And so the Sitka Sound Science Center kind of embarked on this long journey of understanding the mechanics of landslides and how to be able to predict them, because there's a lot of different factors that you could study, but what does it really we kind of had to think about what really does help predict a landslide. And so we partnered with the Sitka Tribe of Alaska, which is the governmental entity of the Tlingit tribal citizens in Sitka, to create this landslide warning system. So residents can go to sitkalandslide.org, and there they see a risk level of high, medium, or low based on rainfall over a certain time period in the area. And then there's resources like oral histories of landslides and what we can learn from them, how to be prepared, and then even, a place to report landslides when you see them. So this was just for Sitka because it requires really localized data. The geology of Southeast Alaska varies a lot between islands and places, but different communities started to think, hey, why can't we have one of those websites? So we're now embarking on the Kute project. Kute is weather in Tlingit, and that is a partnership with 6 other communities across Southeast Alaska to try and determine ways for them to be more prepared for landslides. So whether it's a warning system like this or another type of community outreach platform, that's what one project that the research team is working on these days. They also do berry studies because our berries are very important in Sitka as a harvestable food item. And we do work on salmon and other natural resources. We have an aquarium that was established back when the building was part of the college. And it is a really cool place to see the intertidal and subtidal animals of Sitka and of coastal Alaska. So a lot of people don't get to be scuba divers, but they can come to our aquarium and touch different animals and see the cucumbers, which are always a crowd favorite. The lined chitin is one of my favorites just because of how vibrant it is. And then you've got the Christmas anemone and the wolf eel and the moon jellies. And so people who come can visit and see the diversity of life underwater. We do get a lot of cruise tourism in Sitka. So this summer, it's bumped up to be estimated to be 500,000 people coming through from May through September. And the aquarium is a popular place for tourists to come. And so we have a chance to kind of teach them about coastal ecosystems in that way. And when visitors come, they also tour our salmon hatchery. So another fun connection, you guys have a cow ranch and we have a fish ranch. So fish farms are banned in Alaska, but fish hatcheries support the wild populations. So our hatchery was established as an educational hatchery, and it has definitely remained that over the years. We have 3 full-time staff operating, and then a lot of students coming through to learn about the process of the hatchery. So here's Haley, our fish culturist, with a pink salmon and some eggs here. We raise 250,000 coho, 3 million pink salmon, and 3 million chum salmon, and we raise them until they're about this size, and then they are released into the ocean, and the eagles descend. But then they do go out, and some of them come back in a couple years and spawn again. Does anyone know what the other 2 kinds of salmon, Pacific salmon, are? Yeah, Charlotte. Yep, that's one. Yeah, nailed it. Yeah, you got your pinky finger. You've got your silver or coho, which is your silver ring finger. You've got your king finger, which is Chinook because it's the tallest. You've got your pointer finger, which is, I think, sockeye because you poke your eye, and then chum, or dog salmon is the thumb. Yes, so our hatchery is the oldest working hatchery in Alaska right now. And it's a place for students to come and learn, and also for us to do our small part in supporting the wild population of salmon. And then my favorite, science education. We host science education programs for pre-K learners all the way through adult learners in Sitka. We have 3 full-time staff, 1 AmeriCorps, and then a bunch of other people from every other department working with us to make these education programs happen. I'm going to showcase just a few of them, but I also included some photos of our summer camps here. We do a revolution engineering camp for middle school students every year. And it's a 2-week camp where they have to design something and build something. And this is from our design and build a cardboard boat year. And they were able to fit every camper in that boat until it sunk. And then featured photo right here by your very own Dustin, featuring one of our cool campers. So science research and science education at the Science Center are deeply intertwined. We're constantly working with our research staff to bring visiting researchers into the schools. And so our scientist in residency fellowship program, which is acronymed as SURF, brings scientists to Sitka for like a month at a time. And while they have a chance to work on their research and do their studies, they also practice science communication and getting out into the community. So Sitka is a super engaged community, which is unlike other places I've lived. We have a local radio station that broadcasts across Southeast Alaska. And so our scientists often get on for the morning interview, which is like hosted by the news people. And then we also do different public events with our scientists. And they, will host like coffee hour and go to the local coffee shop and just sit, and it'll be advertised and people can come in and chat with them. And we find that the public really loves that and loves getting to, know who's coming in and what they're doing here, and get a chance to connect with them. And then we also often connect our scientists to a school program. We have 3 high schools in Sitka, and then 1 middle school, 1 elementary, and 1 kindergarten school. And so over the years, having developed relationships with the teachers, we understand kind of what curriculum is happening throughout the year, and we can often pinpoint different classes and say, hey, we think that this scientist might fit really well in this classroom. Do you want to meet them? Do you want to talk about that? And so Brian got to go into Mount Edgecombe High School's marine biology class and do some of his kelp work with them and connect with some students. We also host Sitka Whale Fest every November, which is a marine science symposium that brings undergrads, high schoolers, research scientists, and community members together in Sitka to celebrate marine science and have short 15-minute talks from different speakers. This was the courting babies and growth year. We had a whole jellyfish sex talk, and it was a very fun, quirky year of presentations. But there's also different workshops and necropsies that we do on marine mammals and snorkeling adventures and things like that to just get people excited about marine science. So to segue, science research and science education and this idea of bringing scientists into the schools, one of our big programs is the Scientists in the Schools program. This is Dr. Laura Rockatennens, who was actually the previous president of OBFS. And she's known as Dr. Rocket in all of the 2nd grade classrooms in Sitka because she talks about biomimicry, which is part of their science unit. And they do an engineering challenge where they have to build a PPPU, which gets a huge cackle out of them. And it's a pom-pom picker-upper. And so they're mimicking beaks of different birds to try and build a tool. And we do Scientists in the Schools program with just about every grade level, which is exciting because that means those students see a different scientist every year. They see a different discipline of science. They see different types of people who work in science every year. And then we hope that, in some way they connect or get excited about the science that they're seeing. Okay. This next 2 slides are about our course within a course model of science education, 2 programs that I work on a lot, and they're kind of with this like workforce development lens, as well as just being science education more broadly. So the first one is all about aquaculture. We've been talking about salmon a lot, and so this program is a partnership between us, the Sitka Sound Science Center, the school district, the local university system in Sitka, and fishermen hatcheries. So it's part of the Sitka High School field science class, and they come once a week during the school year. Every Wednesday, they come to our hatchery and they work with our fish culturists on whatever they're doing that week. So it's super seasonal, and they start out the year spawning salmon. They jump right in. They take eggs. They learn about where they're going to be incubated, and they learn all about the conditions that are needed for that. And then as the winter comes along, they take care of the eggs, see how they mature throughout the winter. And then in the summer, they move out into the pens until finally there's this beautiful moment in May where the seniors release the salmon as they're also releasing into the wild from high school. So it's a super exciting program where the students feel like they're actually helping the hatchery work, and they're actually getting to do something during their school day that feels super productive and super hands-on. And a lot of the kids in the class are from fishing families, so they're doing things that they know just in a kind of different way, because maybe they worked on a fishing boat and they can tie the best knots out of anyone. So they go help Haley, our fish culturist, with that while other people are learning. So there's a lot of, there's these 3 kind of pillars that we think about in this program: building technical skills, gaining confidence in their own life skills, because like I said, they grew up in Sitka, and with that comes a lot of experience that I did not have growing up in Vermont. And so I can tell them, you guys, you have a lot of things you should be putting on your resumes that you don't quite think about as being super valuable to other people. And so in December, midway through their school year, we do a speed interview type of career fair called Futures Connect. And so we invite different hatchery organizations, fishermen, conservation folks, people from Fish and Game, and let's see, people from mariculture, so like kelp farming entities, kind of trying to get a broad reach of organizations that may look for young people like them who have skills in this world. And they do a 5-minute chat with each person and kind of move around. And we help them prepare their resume. We help them practice their introductions so that they feel more confident in themselves and speaking about their own experiences and talents and abilities. And yeah, so through that, then they're also discovering different career pathways. I think a lot of high schoolers don't, necessarily know all of the possibilities that are out there for them. And they definitely don't know that Alaskan high schoolers are sought after in terms of having valuable life experience and being comfortable in pouring rain 24 hours a day, and all those things that kind of make them who they are in Sitka. So yeah. I think if I, yeah. So it's the course within a course, it's the Futures Connect, and then there are also internships and mentorships that come out of the class. So Annan, this is his second summer working at the Science Center, and he is now working in the aquarium instead of the hatchery, but he's gained a lot of experience through that as well. And then this is the program that Dustin introduced me with. This is a similar model, but with a different high school class. So Sitka High School has a grant-funded class funded through the Sea-Alaska Heritage Institute, which is a institute designed to perpetuate cultural knowledge. And it's called the Traditional Ecological Knowledge class. So this class is a science class, and we get to partner with them on building their field tech skills. So throughout the semester, the students work on a research project that's relevant to their community. And in this case, that is centered around yellow cedar trees. Yellow cedar trees are important for construction, arts. The bark is used for weaving, and so you pull bark strips like that. This was a super fresh one that we found one day. And so the students kind of learn the story of why yellow cedar is important to their community, and then they design a research project and walk the whole way through it with us, with the Science Center staff as mentors. So, they learn about yellow cedar, they think of a question to ask, they design the field work, they do the field work, they analyze the data, and they make a poster and they present it to community members and other peers in the community. So here are 3 students presenting their work, and they got to travel to Juneau for this, which was really special. And I got to be a chaperone for the first time, which was also really special. And so again, they are building skills. Again, we try to reinforce the idea that they have these technical skills and they have the experience that companies who are hiring field techs want. They know how to be outside, they know how to be comfortable outdoors, they know how to use hand tools, all of those things. And then they are also discovering new career paths. So this was a conversation with Ben Hamilton, who is a videographer for National Geographic, but we were kind of more talking about how drones are useful in field science situations, and that definitely got them stoked on the technology involved with field work. Yeah, so I think overall these 2 programs specifically are meant to be super place-based and super pathway-oriented, thinking about what Sitka students might want to do and what might be good ways for them to stay in the region if that's what they want, or what might be good ways for them to expand out if that's what they want, and just kind of hopefully opening some doors. And yeah, so overall, I think, there are a lot of similarities there about wanting, students to see scientists, just like this week in Scrub Camp with all the students getting to meet many of you and seeing how science can look a lot of different ways and be a lot of different things, and just kind of encouraging that curiosity from, young 4-year-olds all the way to our adult learners. And so I would just like to say thank you for hosting me. I'm definitely leaving with new ideas and excitement and inspiration about what's to come for Science Center in Sitka, and also our partnership as organization or as field stations together. Yeah, so thank you.
We've got time for questions.
Yeah.
That was a great talk. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for visiting. Oh. But then he needs to stand by the.
Oh, there's nothing.
You might have to turn it on.
What moment everyone saw us broke the mic?
Yeah, we can just stand.
How do you, so I wanted to know how you select the students that work with you, or does anyone, do they apply to a program, or do they, yeah, I just wanted to make that. Thank you.
Good question. So the two programs that I highlighted were school programs. So it was just based on who was enrolled in the class and who chose to take the class. And otherwise, with our interns and things like that, typically they do apply. It's super easy. They have to email our fish culturist and just tell her why they want to be there. And oftentimes we're kind of working with the teacher too to target students who don't have something lined up for the summer and might be super interested. So, yeah.
Steph here. So this was really cool. So I really appreciate you sharing, teaching me a lot, and gives me a lot of ideas. One of the things I would love to hear more about is you kind of talked about the intersection with a couple different community groups, and they're probably not necessarily like separate community groups, but overlapping by both with the indigenous cultures and with probably the fishing community, and especially with sometimes within industry or like fishing community per se, there could be challenges with the interlap of conservation and with protection of natural resources if done improperly. How have you brought these different groups into conversation and also learned from them to inform the work that you guys do? And whatever else you would like to share about working with those different groups and what you guys have learned.
Um, so let's see. I would say that the fishing industry in Sitka is focused on conservation because they fully understand that if the fish are gone, then their job is gone. So the fishermen themselves, which is a diverse group in itself, is responsible for the ban on fish farms in Alaska. So they opted to pay a certain tax to contribute to hatcheries so that the hatcheries will then support the wild stock. Yeah, I think that I was definitely referencing also different just like towns in Southeast Alaska as well. But yeah, there are definitely conflict in terms of resource management. The herring fishery in Sitka is a really good example of that, where the state and our local community led by our indigenous leaders are clashing on how to manage that resource. Sitka is the last place in Southeast Alaska where herring are spawning. It used to cover most of the region. And the herring roe are a food source for Southeast Alaska. Something you could totally learn more about. And it's super interesting. When the herring spawn in Sitka, there's some statistic about how many pounds of herring eggs are shipped out to different communities because families in Sitka are trying to share with the other communities that used to have herring runs and have traditionally relied on them as a food source. So that's a big export in the springtime. Yeah, the Science Center itself is, we have shied away from kind of being labeled as a conservation organization, which is different from you all, and just an interesting thing. But yeah, does that start to answer the question? Definitely doesn't dive deep, but yeah.
Thank you. Really interesting talk. I have a lot of questions, but so one question is, it does look like you're doing a lot of community engagement how do you structure that in a way, or like do you have a social scientist working with you to get feedback from the community? Like with the landslide example, how did you know that the community was interested in that? I mean, there was a fatality, so like how do you get knowledge from the community to know what they're interested in so that your science can inform their concerns? That sort of relationship was really interesting to me.
Yeah, that is a really good question and one that we think about a lot. I think there was a social scientist on the landslide project. That happened before I arrived, so I don't know too much about it, but he definitely came to town and had a lot of interviews with people and kind of helped inform how Sitka would want the information shared and what we would want that to look like, especially because with landslides, property value and insurance comes into play very quickly, and that is a big issue. But more broadly speaking, we have a Facebook group for the town called Sitka Chatters, and it's very active, super active. So that's one way, but there are also town hall meetings where people share concerns, and the tribe and the Science Center are working together more to share conversations between their natural resources department or resource protection department, sorry, and their environmental lab and us to see how we can collaborate and what their citizens are concerned about. And yeah, otherwise I would say generally people just kind of come to the Science Center and will openly ask questions and talk with us about what projects we're doing and what we might be interested in doing in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also interested in that relationship with local communities within the education program. Like, do you ever bring in like indigenous like tribes leaders to sort of share stories with these like local students? And have you seen like examples where that inspired students to like learn more about like the local land or like pursue career within like in that region?
Yeah. So one example of a student who kind of connected more with, I think, Indigenous science was Damien in our traditional ecological knowledge class. He has a beautiful quote about how he did not think of trees as very alive before the class. And then after doing his research project all about yellow cedar and hearing specifically from our community members, our artists, our elders about the trees' importance, he kind of started to see them as being more alive and just shifted his view in that way. But we do partner with the educators at Sitka Tribe of Alaska, specifically to build out the culturally responsive part of our science programs. The more that we can be place-based and culturally responsive in our education programs, the better, because we don't want any youth in Sitka to feel like they're not part of science, because science, has been science before it was called science. The knowledge that people have of the land in Sitka is really strong, and really important that we acknowledge that Western science did not, so there's this whole story about marine ecology with Sitka and how someone, started to notice how the intertidal zone was organized by animals' behavior and what they ate rather than just, crabs were here and something was here. And so my point is that people have understood scientific concepts like ecology in Sitka for a long time. And so we definitely try to be as culturally responsive as possible in our programs. And that looks a lot of different ways for sure. Yeah.
Do you also have, you mentioned universities in the town. Do you have university students and researchers utilizing or utilizing a science center? It sounds like you don't have land. No, but you are working in this area and then it's kind of this hub for scientists.
Yeah, we are definitely, we have no acres. We are, yeah, we have our main building and our hatchery, and we do partner with the local university, especially on our aquaculture course within a course, because they have a professor, Angie Bowers, who studies kelp growth and mariculture. And so she comes in and works with the students throughout the year. But they have their own research facilities. We do partner a lot with outside schools that come in and can use our space. So we have a long-standing partnership with UC Santa Cruz in California, and they come up every year to do undergraduate research projects and they do use our wet basement for that. So we are able to share some space. Yeah.
I was sort of curious on the science side. So, you have lots of visiting scientists, and presumably you make a decision whether this is a worthwhile project to host and entertain. But do you have any sort of big science vision of what are the big questions you're trying to answer and tie together all of, what are the major issues for you? And does the community help you sort of say what these big questions are? And then are you going out to recruit scientists to specifically address those questions? I was sort of wondering to what extent science is a driving force for you, or I'm just curious how you handle that.
So interestingly different from you all as well is our research staff is small. We have a research coordinator, a research director, and then we have people hired specifically for grant funded research projects. So our research director and our research coordinator both have their own interests areas, but they're not necessarily what's the word, like full-time able to do science research. And so the grants that we have for our research projects, we apply to those grants based on what we hear from the community, and then we try and bring people in to those projects as we see we need and what would be helpful. So for the landslide project specifically, we now have people on staff working as geologists and project managers and data managers to carry out the Kute project across the region. But it is also just a lot of outreach. So we have community catalysts in different towns across Southeast so that we are connected to them, because we're not going to be able to answer a question about Huna without being in Huna. And so we rely on those partners to kind of carry out the project. Does that start to answer the question? When I think about big science questions for the Science Center, I do think about landslides. I think about how climate change is going to impact the marine ecosystems right outside. So looking at kelp forests and what is happening there is something that we think about. And then that piece of food is kind of a thread through a lot of projects too, like with the berries, with salmon. We had a project looking at how hatchery salmon are impacting wild salmon, because that's definitely a big question. Like if hatchery salmon are breeding with wild salmon and making the genetics change, making the populations change, what's that going to mean for our food and for our stability? So that's definitely a common thread as well.